There are lots of ways that we can ruin our career. From my 20 plus years of experience working in the corporate world, I've seen a bunch of them. And I've learned from being an executive coach for the last 12 or so years, a way to boil it down into my top 10 so we can consume it. This is the extended version where I go into lots of more detail. Obviously, it's going to be a longer video, but I get into exactly how to identify when these things are happening for us. If you want to watch an abridged version, it's only a few minutes long, you can go to my YouTube channel and find it there. Without further ado, let's get into the top 10 things that ruin careers. Hi, my name is Shawn Sommerkamp, and this is Motivationeer Christian Coaching. There are things we do that ruin our careers. It stinks, but it's true. Sometimes we know we're punching ourselves in the face when it happens. Other times we're not quite sure, hey, is it me? Is it them? What's going on? Why are things not happening in my career? What's holding me back? Sometimes we do things that get us fired immediately. What this list is about are the subtle things, those that are nuanced, that don't get us fired, but we do them and it greatly prevents us from moving ahead. I refer to these as career limiting moves, and we all do them. They don't get us fired, but they definitely hold us back. A survey company called Vital Smarts did a recent survey where they found from the participants, 83% of the people said that they have witnessed someone making a blunder that had a catastrophic career effect on them, on their career. 69% of the group said that they themselves had done something that damaged their career. 31% said they did something that cost them a promotion outright, a raise, or a job. 27% said they did something that damaged a working relationship, and 11% said they did something that destroyed their reputation. We can learn from our mistakes. Sometimes, however, the things that we do, like it says in Song of Songs 2:15, are so subtle, they're like foxes that ruin the vineyard. I refer to these as things that get us pigeonholed. We may not know we're doing it. They're not going to get us fired, but they do hold us back. Sometimes we might have an inkling, but we're not really sure and no one's going to admit it. But we do get tucked away in such a way that we're not kicked off the career ladder, but we can't climb it any longer. Without further ado, here they are. Our very first in the top 10 is pride. This one can be so subtle, we almost never realize it. I went on a job interview to be a director of North America for this company, where in the final review, the panel of 6 senior leaders all said, "We love you, we'd like to offer you the job," but all of us agree independently of one another that we all see arrogance in you. What do you think about that, Shawn? It amazed me in that moment. I couldn't quite believe it. But by the power of the Holy Spirit, I'll say God spoke through me and I gave the perfect answer. And it was true, honestly. I said, look, I don't see this right now, but the fact that you're bringing it up to my attention, it's impressive and very important to me. I want to know when I'm doing it. So if you would commit to letting me know when I do it, I guarantee you I'm going to change it, because I don't want to be like that. I hate it. They were blown away by that and they offered me the job on the spot. It wasn't for 6 months of continuing to show this pride. I didn't see it. They weren't really able to put their finger on it, so they weren't bringing it up to me. But during my half-year review, the boss said, look, we've got to figure this out. You've got really strained relationships with your global counterparts. We've got to figure this out. So we did. And what we came to, and it was like a lightning bolt, I realized, you know what? You brought me in with a decade of experience. I had run a $190 million business compared to this little $10 million business you want me to run here. I thought you guys knew you were hiring a big gun. I think what they want me to do is act like a newbie and get lots of advice from them and insight because they're so wise. And my boss is like, that is exactly what it is. We know this industry. We've been doing this our whole career. You don't even know this industry. Yes, you know how to be a director of professional services, but we want you to ask for our opinion and advice, our input. And that was it. Once I realized it, the subtle pride immediately went away, and man, we started working together like clockwork as a global team. But it was very subtle. This is why I think Proverbs 16:18, it's so profound. Pride goes before destruction and haughty spirit before a fall. I was headed to destruction. with this company, even though no one could quite put their finger on it. Pride is subtle. Here are a few ways that we exhibit it. A big ego. Ignoring emails or texts because we're too busy to respond. Always having to speak up at meetings because we think what we have to say is really important. Oof. That's me. I've done that a lot. Being late frequently without apologizing for it, thinking that, you know what, it's okay if I'm late. I don't need to explain myself. Writing surly, borderline, harsh emails to people because we think we're right and the way they're behaving is wrong. Being defensive when giving criticism and being disrespectful. These are things that we want to put our finger on and identify very quickly, or things are going to go wrong quickly. That's the longest one. The other 9 are going to be more brief. Let's get into number 2, apathy. Apathy is indifference, lack of interest, lack of concern, lethargy. In a word, it's like that meh kind of feeling that we give. We're walking around not really into it, so to speak. This is because we've been dissatisfied for a period of time with some aspect of our job, and it's turned into frustration. Maybe we're overwhelmed now. Maybe we even believe our apathy is warranted because of an injustice that is incurred, what we think is an injustice that has occurred in our time there in the company. They don't care about me, clearly because they did this, so I'm not going to care about them. We often don't realize this is happening. That little subtle voice that tells us to not care, it's very quiet, and because we think it's justified, it's not overt. I think this is the Revelation 3:16 statement. So because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. Here are the warning signs of workplace apathy because we might not see it. When we stop making meaningful contributions on the team, when we do the bare minimum, when we show little enthusiasm with team meetings like eye rolling. There's little creativity in our output. We become problem focused instead of solution focused, which is its own, I'm going to talk about in just a minute. We stop adding to our skill set and enhancing our value to the company. This is a slow killer. We may tell ourselves this is how it's always going to be. Nothing's going to change. I'm just going to grit it out. There's no hope for me here. And then we spend year after year in the mud with no growth prospects, and we get pigeonholed. Our third in the top 10 is insecurity. This one is so big and sneaky, I won't have time to really go in depth, but I do want you to consider the following examples of how insecurity really does take hold and manifest itself in our career. The consistent need for validation. It's frequently seeking approval or reassurance from our boss. My boss doesn't ever give me enough good feedback. I don't get enough congratulations or pats on the back or attaboys. Fear of taking risk, avoiding new projects or challenging opportunities by not volunteering for something because we think it will be too difficult for us, because we're so insecure. Overworking, that's putting in excessive hours. Working really long hours because we think if we don't, we're going to get fired. Comparison with our colleagues. That's frequently looking at how we're doing compared to other people, feeling threatened by their success story, not wanting to celebrate the successes that they have, but feeling inadequate when others succeed. And then lastly, the reluctance to ask for help. We think avoiding asking for help means we don't have to ever admit our mistakes. We can kind of fly under the radar. People don't have to see us blowing it, so we're never going to get fired. We're so insecure about our own skill set, we don't want to ask other people for help. This one is something I can kind of fall into from time to time. Proverbs 29:25 says this, "Fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe." Isn't it amazing to see this as a context in the workplace? When we focus on our purpose and not our predicament, we're safe. We feel safe. We can embrace the situation around us, the people around us, the promises of God. When we don't, and we give into insecurity, this fear of other people, it's going to stop us from growing and doing great things. It is a real killer. Our fourth in the top 10 is dishonesty. Who more than the disciples of Jesus will have an unyielding, unflinching integrity, right? Well, even though we're supposed to embody the quality of being honest and morally upright, knowing that the truth of Christ is one of his hallmarks, we sometimes do subtle things that lack honesty. For example, we shade the truth. We don't give all the details, leaving just enough in the darkness so that we don't look bad. We exaggerate our skills or contributions. We subtly omit details so we don't get in trouble. We blame others. We take undue credit. We state things that are technically true, but intentionally mislead. That's a form of dishonesty, or we lack integrity. These are the ways it manifests itself the most. Allowing dishonesty into our workday, these subtle ways, without absolute integrity, will undermine career success and actually get us pigeonholed. Proverbs 11:3 says it very nicely. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them. In the things that I've just given you, it's not quick, immediate destruction, it's subtle. I didn't even mention the grossly obvious ones like embezzling money, lying about a colleague to get them fired, falsifying records, insider trading, etc. Of course, this is just the career-limiting moves, the subtle ones. Our fifth in the top 10 is unreliability. Being reliable simply means we have the track record of doing what we promise that we would do or expected in our role of responsibility. Being unreliable means people at work can't count on us. Again, they may never tell us that. They may just say, you know what, don't give it to Shawn. Or, you know what, let's not invite Shawn to this meeting. We're not going to really be able to count on him anyways. They may not even say that to one another. They just might be thinking that in their head and influencing decisions based on that, not including you. We can behave in such a way that people start doubting our abilities or our commitment. Sometimes that doubt comes in the form of doubting our character. Oof. Luke 16:10 says this, "He who is faithful in a very little thing is faithful also in much. And he who is unrighteous in a very little thing is unrighteous also in much." We really want to be dependable in the little things that we do all the time. We can't let any little thing slip. Here's how it kind of creeps into our career. When we show we can't be counted on for things like keeping confidential information confidential, arriving on time, that one kind of went into the pride and arrogance, knowing when to hold our tongue in front of customers, just blabbing things that undermine the company, delivering on what we promised we would deliver, which I mentioned before, staying at work sometimes late when everyone else is staying just because we want to get the work done. We can't be counted on to run larger projects and do bigger things when we can't be counted on in these small, subtle ways. I also have a bonus verse that I just couldn't leave out, and this image represents it perfectly. It's Proverbs 25:19. Like a broken tooth or a lame foot is reliance on the unfaithful in times of trouble. When we have the reputation of being unreliable, it means we are unfaithful. People will stop relying on us. Our sixth in the top 10 is negativity. This is about being an eternal pessimist. No, not about questioning things and being skeptical. This is about being forever pessimistic. Followers of Christ are optimistic. We know that in all things God works for the good for his glory. We are just along for the ride. So we get to either enjoy the ride by putting our hands up and, being positive and optimistic, or really gritting it out like this ride stinks. We can be one of those people who act like the ride is bad or ugly or disappointing. Ever been around someone at work who's just negative all the time? They will ruin the ride for everyone else. The beautiful thing is we get to decide whether or not we are going to complain about life, things at work, or rejoice in the little things and act like we care. These are the top ways that we can demonstrate negativity all the time. Forcing people to have to always prove things to us. Refusing to adapt to the company culture because maybe we think it's lame. Complaining about every little thing that we do. Mistreating others, especially dogging those who are positive and really love their jobs. Talking behind other people's back. Assuming the worst is going to always happen. If we aren't completely sure if we have that bad attitude, it's easy to tell. Just look around at all the people that we've kind of attracted to ourselves and ask, are they complainers? Do they have a bad attitude? That means we do. Pessimism attracts pessimists. Here's one quick book recommendation that I just love how they explain how to get out of this. It's called The Energy Bus by John Gordon. Please check it out. Our 7th in the top 10 is disorganization. How better can I start this by referencing the verse in 1 Corinthians 14? 2 verses actually, which I'm taking pieces of each. For God is not a God of disorder, but of peace. All things must be done properly and in order. It's interesting to think that being disorganized is the opposite of peace, or being disorganized will rob us of our peace. When we lack order, when we're disorganized, it appears to others like we have too much going on in our mind all the time, like our minds are too cluttered to keep up. It's as if we're unable to handle what we've already been given, the little we've been given, so we're not even going to be able to handle being given anything more. It will hold us back greatly. Here are some ways this little shortcoming might manifest itself. Procrastination. Although it would benefit us to get things done quickly, on time, we just keep putting things off. Workspace clutter. We have a piling system instead of a filing system. Or these days, if you just keep using paper, even though digital file management systems are available, it can get us disorganized. It can show disorganization. Poor time management. Are you one of those people who are always rushed, running from one meeting to the next, talking out of breath? That doesn't look good. Over budget on projects, over budget in our department management, spending too much, not keeping track of the budget. And then lastly, underperforming on our task commitments. Number 8 in the top 10, this is emotionality. This pertains to expressing emotions at work. And this doesn't just apply to negative emotions, it can also apply to the positive ones. Some of us can tend to be over happy and over anxious, over dramatic. Mostly though, the emotions that we express at work that negatively impact our growth potential are negative emotions. It's not being negative either. It's really about being dramatic. Yes, it can mean the obvious screaming matches in the office, maybe even a physical altercation with an employee, God forbid. Those can tend to get us fired very quickly. There are more subtle ways, and I want to share these nuances. How we can be emotional in the workplace is overreacting to feedback. We get a bad end of the year review and we kind of overreact to it. Not just completely flip out, but get really, really bothered and anxious about it. Inconsistency in decision making, allowing emotions to drive decisions instead of rational analysis. When we use data to make decisions, it allows us to detach emotionally from the decisions we're making. Overly emotional communication, using an overly emotional tone, hyperbolic language, communicating in ways that are exaggerative, or just plain old emotional words. How about frequent mood swings? Ever work with someone who seems moody all the time? Displaying unpredictable mood swings will create an unstable work environment and an unpredictable future for us. And as I mentioned earlier, excessive enthusiasm. While it is great to be positive, being excessively enthusiastic can come across way more immature. It can be like we don't really know what we're talking about in the business. Jeremiah 17:9 says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it?" This does not mean to not listen to our intuition or gut or instinct. This means not listening to our emotions. Thinking about things from an emotional perspective will always deceive us. Another bonus verse, Proverbs 16:32, which I love. "Whoever is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and the one who rules their spirit better than the one who takes a city." Our 9th in the top 10 is appearance. This is one of the most obvious ones that I think almost everybody I talk to really knows, have a pretty good idea of what this is. We know what professional appearance is, and yet without diligence, we let it get out of control, or we get lackadaisical about it. Very simply, this is about dressing sloppy, having unkempt hair, wrinkled clothing. Oh, I've got so many examples of that, I can't go into it. Poor hygiene, breath and body odor, bad manners while eating in front of others, interrupting people a lot, outdated wardrobe, having a messy desk, being disorganized, but in a personal manner. How we carry ourselves in appearance is just as important as our communication and attitude. This can also mean vanity, staring at the mirror. I had this one boss who we had to spend a lot of time together to get this big project up and running. And we'd end up going up and down the elevator to these meetings all the time on different floors. And every time we got into this elevator in our work building that had these mirrors, he would just walk right up to the mirror and stare at himself and look himself up and down. And he would do like this right in front of me. He didn't even realize he was doing it. It was so gross. He was so vain. I couldn't believe it. In his case, it hadn't really held him back because he was such a phenom and a superstar, but it did really inhibit building better relationships that could have allowed him to go even farther in his career. We don't want to be spending way too much money on our wardrobe. We can maintain a great appearance without being worldly. Yes, it also means having this super expensive watch. I knew someone who bragged about having an $11,000 watch that he wore all the time. It wasn't a good look. Having expensive shoes over having a too expensive automobile. As Christians, we want to be more subtle than this. We don't want to let this affect our appearance so that we look really worldly, wearing skin-tight clothing, which a lot of people do today because they think it's powerful to do that. It's not. Let me touch very briefly on ink and piercings. If you do a quick search on tattoos and piercings, you'll find lots of articles about this, a plethora of it. But even though the tagline says tattoos are okay now and you can get mods and they're fine, please read the article. Those headings are just to get you to click on it because it's like shocking. Really? Every article you read, please do this. I don't want to be over confident here. I just did a quick search. Everyone that I read, about 10 of them, when you get into the fine detail says, but tattoos are only acceptable in a handful of industries. They did that tagline to get you to click on it. Yeah, there are way more industries today that accept tattoos, like media and arts, fashion and beauty. You want to get into the UFC, tattoos are fine, but they're still, compared to all the industries, a very, very tiny percentage. I definitely recommend being conservative here. Our 10th and final is defiance. It's not about having a disagreement. We can disagree. We don't want to always have the same opinion as our boss. We don't always want to keep our opinion to ourselves. This is about things like ignoring directives, deliberately not following instructions, or company policies. That's defiance. Undermining authority, subtly or overtly challenging the authority of our supervisors or management. Questioning their decision-making in front of others or behind their back, like they don't really know what they're talking about. That's defiance. Passive aggression, a big one. Displaying passive-aggressive behavior such as giving the silent treatment, making sarcastic comments, maybe even sometimes under our breath, intentionally working slower to cause disruptions, bad juju, refusing to collaborate with others, deliberately avoiding teamwork or not participating in group activity. Yeah, that can be passive-aggressive, but just being defiant about it, I'm not working with this team. I told you I didn't want to, I'm not going to. Sabotaging work, intentionally making errors in our own work, withholding important information so that others can't keep the progression going in the work that we're doing, manipulating work processes. These are all defiance. Colossians 3:12 says it very nicely. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. These are the exact opposite of defiant. If we're being these, we can't be defiant. Okay, that's the top 10 things that ruin careers. Here they are in a little summary that I have. On the left, 4, pride, apathy, insecurity, and dishonesty. On the right, unreliability, negativity, disorganization, emotionality, appearance, and defiance. When you look at the first word in each of these, they form an acronym, the paid undead. When we allow these things to be in our career, it's like we're walking around aimless without any life in our career future. No future projects, very, very limited. We don't want to be like that. We want to make a difference with our career. Our career is not just a way to make a living, it's a way to transform the world. We can make an intentional effort to identify these 10 and make sure that we're doing the very opposite of them. I really would love to hear your comments. Please let me know below what you think about this list. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for 2 new videos each week. Tell me in the comments below about your career situation and I'll make a video for you with a shout out. You can also become a member at Motivationeer.com. Your career is not just a way to make a living, it's a way to transform the world.